had a Merry Christmas. Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now.
Jimothy.
So it has been a while, and trust me when I say I've been taking care of Christmas, taking care of my children. Christmas is done and dusted, and we are back on the regularly scheduled program, which is Yu-Gi-Oh content for the most part. A little bit sporadic, but I know that real life sometimes gets in the way. That's why I don't want to commit to an upload schedule yet. But we will do in the not too distant future, ladies and gents. And we're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers. I can smell it. So please pass this on to your friends, family members, anyone that's into Yu-Gi-Oh, anyone that wants some kind of roguish, competitive content. This is the place to be, ladies and gents. And without wasting any more time, let's just get into today's topic, or today's video, which is 3 cards I believe you potentially should include going forward, at least for the next format or so. Now, we know Supreme Darkness is going to be coming out later on in 2025. I believe it is like somewhere around the 24th of January. So that's when you can expect a little bit of shift in terms of what's being played with regards to the meta. However, until that point, we are firmly in Malice and Rizio territory, and those 2 decks seem to be running away with a lot of representation amongst the competitive events that we kind of have now or in the not so distant future. So it's best to be prepared for those. Now, we already know what the mainstays are in terms of like staple cards. You're looking at your crossout designators, you're looking at your ultimate slayers, Book of Eclipse, Artifact Lancia, all that beautiful stuff. However, there are a few cards that I feel like are a little bit underexplored and a little bit underprepared for, or underlooked, so to speak. So the first card that I had in mind is none other than Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion. Now, this card I believe has so many applications. Now, the reason I say this is because of its coverage over the metagame. Now, typically when a card falls out of the metagame, it's mainly because it doesn't have enough coverage over a spread of matches. It's only really good against like 1, potentially maybe 2 decks. However, Ghost Belle is one of those cards that is very, very intermittent with regards to its influence in the format. Now, the reason it's good now is because it can stop the Malice cards. It can stop the Malice GWC06, which is the trap card that allows you to special summon from banished graveyard or some other place. It can also stop the Malice in Underground, which again banishes a card from graveyard, hand, or deck. It can also stop White Binder, which is a very, very powerful combo enabler and extender, so to speak, especially on your opponents, well, your turns, basically, if you're playing against Malice. It's crazy how much this card covers. Not to mention, it also has an effect against Rizio plugin, as well as Fiendsmith Engraver and Lacrima, and that card covers so much mileage, and those are typically some of the strategies that you're going to be facing if you go to anything bigger than like a locals, especially at any regional level or anything like that. You're definitely going to see Rizio, you're definitely going to see Fiendsmith, and you're most likely going to see Malice. So having a Ghost Belle teched into your mains, even in your main deck, to be honest, or at least the side deck, I think will go a long way in helping you to combat some of those strategies. Now, the next card I wanted to talk about is none other than Change of Heart. Now, Change of Heart is interesting mainly because it's almost a guaranteed 1-for-1 trade, and in some instances it can actually be a little bit more than that. Now, in the Malice matchup specifically, and I know I'm talking a lot about Malice and Rizio, but it's hard to get away from, ladies and gents, especially with the popularity of those 2 decks. You're definitely going to come up against one of those 2 strategies, and you need some way to combat them. So Change of Heart, it can trade with the Deceive Worm Engrave, especially if they've ended on the Firewall Dragon Terahertz, which can be a little bit problematic, and it's something to be a little bit cognizant about, because those little interactions can sometimes hide in the graveyard and you can sometimes forget about them. So just having the Change of Heart to basically instantly trade with the Deceive Worm Negate is important, because it will allow you to play some of your more prominent spells and traps, so to speak. So it's definitely a good idea to kind of like bait it out that way. Another application is the Rizio matchup. You can go ahead and attempt to take the Detonator. Now, a good Rizal player will potentially like chain the detonator, pop itself, and then bring it back with plug-in or something along those lines, or basically get another detonator on field, which is not a problem because it's baited out the plug-in, it's got rid of one of the detonators, and you haven't done anything to kind of like disrupt the field spell. So it's still one more thing to play through. However, it's one thing that is less difficult to play through, because if you don't go out your way to address the detonator, what will happen is you will just use up all the pops. The detonator gets removed by any stretch of the imagination, and then it gets brought back with the plug-in anyway. And detonators like once per chain, so you can pop upwards of like 3, 4, 5 cards if you're lucky enough to do so and your opponent's got that much gas. But likelihood is, if the detonator resolves and it uses all its materials successfully, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to play. So being able to just bait out that detonator and then effectively only leave it on one pop can actually help you as a strategy. Not to mention, just taking cards is good. You can do whatever you with them. If you do take a detonator and your opponent doesn't chain it, you can actually just go into your own Zeus, wipe the field, just something along those lines. So it's definitely good just to have just a way to kind of like bait some interruptions and just kind of like allow some of your plays to just go through. Now, the final card I want to discuss is Forbidden Chalice. Now, we all know how strong Imperm is as a card, especially going into your turn and using it initially as your first like interaction with your opponent. It can be really, really strong. Effect negation is always going to be solid, especially when you're going around breaking a board. The only issue with Imperm is obviously if you got the cards on the field, you can't play. Chalice obviously fits that mold. It allows you to have some cards on the field, and it allows you to chain it to any effect. And as it's a quick play spell, you can chain it anywhere you like, especially because it modulates attack. So you can actually chain it in a damage step if it's applicable in any sort of the imagination. Now, again, going into some boards, sometimes it's crucial, especially with the combination that you have with the other cards in your hand. It might be useful. So having a chalice in your hand to be able to go ahead and negate something is really, really useful. Whether that's detonator, which is always going to be your top priority, because just removing all your starters off the field is really going to be really difficult for you to kind of like try and play through. Or if it's something like the Malice Crypta, for example, once your opponent's done a whole load of Malice stuff on your turn, having the Crypta as the final piece, so to speak, to kind of like go ahead and banish one of the cards on field. And if you change your Forbidden Chalice to that, it might mean that you can actually kind of like stave off or just kind of like generate some kind of a comeback. So it's definitely a card that's really interesting. It's kind of like in the same vein as Metatronus. Basically, Metatronus obviously gives you a body, but the chalice is very, very effective, and being able to chain it whenever you want is something that can't be overlooked. But that is it. Just 3 cards I've been thinking about, ladies and gents, and I'm actually a little bit on the fence as to what to play. I was thinking about playing Rescue a Fiendsmith, but it just, I don't know. I'm not too sure, and I haven't been to locals in about 2 or 3 weeks because I've been prepping for Christmas. However, once locals is back up and running, I'm definitely going to be attending, and I have got a box of crossover breakers coming with the idea that I'm going to actually try and attempt to play Malice if I get all the cards. I'm basically missing the expensive cards out of the archetype, which is obviously the Field Spout and the White Rabbit. So if I do get a hold of those, ladies and gents, expect to see some Malice content on this channel, because I do feel like the deck has got a lot more moving parts to it, which is something I prefer. I know Rizal is a little bit easier to pilot in terms of its interactions, but I like the way that Malice is looking anyway. But anyway, what are your thoughts, ladies and gents? Are there any cards that I missed out on? Are there any cards that should have been included on this list? I know about some of the meta cards, but I'm looking for a few more like niche interactions, some that might be a little bit underlooked or like I mentioned earlier, underprepared for. Let me know in that comment section below. And we find ourselves at the end of another video. As always, if you did enjoy this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff, and I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.